I was waiting on the platform of Union Station, sipping a burnt coffee from the newsstand kiosk and minding my own business. The morning rush had died down, leaving behind a quieter, more impatient crowd. I had a carry-on bag and a slim laptop case at my feet, nothing unusual. The train to Chicago was running late, and I had nothing to do but wait. That's when he showed up. A transit officer, mid-40s, bulky frame, mirrored sunglasses despite being indoors. He scanned the platform like he was looking for someone, then locked eyes with me. I didn't flinch, but I knew the look. He walked up with a puffed chest and that slow, deliberate gait some cops use to remind you they're in charge before they even speak. "You traveling alone?" he asked, already suspicious. "Yes," I replied calmly. He frowned. "What's in the bag?" "Work stuff. Laptop. Notebook. Chargers. Want to see my ticket too?" I kept my tone neutral, controlled. But that only seemed to irritate him. He didn't answer, just motioned for me to step aside. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to search your belongings," he said. "For what reason?" I asked. He crossed his arms. "You're not cooperating." "That's reason enough." That's when I pulled out my phone and tapped record. "Is this a random search?" I asked, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Or did I do something specific to warrant this attention?" His jaw tightened. He looked around, realizing we had an audience now. And that was only the beginning. The officer's confidence wavered for just a second. Maybe it was the red recording dot flashing on my phone screen. Maybe it was the silence that spread across the platform as people paused to watch. I said step aside, he repeated, but the tone had changed. Less command, more pressure. "I'll comply," I said, "but I'd like your name and badge number first." His mouth twitched. He clearly didn't expect that. "Officer Callahan. Badge 2746. "Thank you," I said, still recording. "And just to be clear, this is an unwarranted bag search with no probable cause, correct?" That made him pause. His eyes darted toward a nearby security camera, then to a transit worker who had come out of the station booth, holding a clipboard and pretending not to listen, but listening all the same. Callahan didn't answer. Instead, he reached down and unzipped my carry-on, slow, deliberate. Inside were exactly what I told him, a notebook, laptop, a bag of almonds, and a pair of sneakers. Nothing suspicious. Nothing even remotely interesting. "Looks like you've got nothing to hide," he muttered, sounding almost disappointed. I didn't speak. I just kept the camera steady on him. Then a voice cut through the platform. "Officer Callahan," someone called. "May I have a word with you?" He turned. So did everyone else. A man in a dark gray suit was walking toward us with purpose. Lean, mid-50s, sharp eyes, badge clipped inside his blazer. Not a uniformed cop, something higher. Callahan straightened. "Deputy Commissioner Rowan, sir." And just like that, the whole energy shifted. Deputy Commissioner Rowan stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on Officer Callahan with a quiet intensity that silenced the platform. "I've been reviewing the surveillance footage from the last 10 minutes, Rowan said, his voice measured but razor-sharp. "Would you care to explain why you singled this passenger out?" Callahan glanced at me, then at Rowan. "Sir, she was acting evasive. I was following standard protocol." Rowan didn't blink. Protocol doesn't begin with intimidation and escalate to a public search without cause. I watched the footage. She stood in one place. She drank her coffee. She checked her phone. That's not evasive. That's called waiting. Callahan's face flushed red, but he said nothing. "Do you know who she is?" Rowan continued. Callahan looked confused. "No, sir." "Should I?" Rowan turned to me with a nod. Apologies for the delay, Chief Marshal Green. The murmurs began instantly. Someone gasped. A few bystanders exchanged looks of disbelief. I gave a polite smile and finally lowered my phone. No problem, Commissioner. I was curious to see how your station security handles everyday passengers. Unfortunately, now I know. Callahan took a full step back, blinking fast. Marshal. As in. Federal. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my credentials. Flashed them. His mouth opened, then closed again, no words coming. You'll want to file a report, Rowan said to me. And I'll be launching an internal review effective immediately. Good, I replied. Because that search wasn't just unnecessary, it was dangerous. If I were someone else, someone without clearance or a badge, this could have gone very differently. Callahan looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. But we weren't done yet. Part 4, next. Part 4 ChatGPT, Part 4, the fallout begins. Callahan stood stiff, eyes flicking between my badge and Rowan's cold expression. His voice finally returned, but it was weak. I didn't know who she was, that's exactly the problem, Rowan interrupted. You thought you didn't need to. You saw someone standing alone and decided they were a problem. That's not policing, that's targeting. The crowd was no longer just curious, they were fully invested. Phones were out. A few people were whispering, some nodding. Callahan was visibly unraveling. I stepped forward, calm and professional. If I hadn't had credentials, would this have ended with a citation? A detainment? Or worse? Callahan stammered. I was just trying to do my job. Your job is to uphold the law, not bend it to fit your assumptions, I said, keeping my tone even. You didn't ask questions. You didn't assess the situation. You saw someone you didn't recognize and jumped to conclusions. Rowan cleared his throat. Officer Callahan, you are relieved of duty pending review. Turn in your badge and service weapon. The silence was instant and complete. I didn't mean any harm, he mumbled, but he was already unhooking his badge, hands shaking. Intent doesn't erase impact, Rowan said sharply. Callahan handed over his badge. Rowan took it without emotion, then looked to me. If you'd like to write a formal statement, I'll walk you to the command office personally. I nodded. Appreciated. As Rowan turned to escort me, I heard someone near the edge of the crowd say, "Damn." She flipped the whole script. They were right. And it wasn't over yet. Part 5, next. Part 5 ChatGPT, Part 5, full circle. We walked through the terminal, past the whispering clusters and the now silent platform. Rowan moved with the kind of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. I matched his pace, my bag rolling behind me, my badge still tucked into my blazer like a silent reminder of everything that had just happened. I meant what I said, he told me as we entered the corridor marked authorized personnel only. We'll be launching a full review of Callahan's conduct. There've been murmurs before, but this was public. Documented. And damning. I gave a small nod. It's never just one incident. It's always a pattern. He just picked the wrong person today. We entered the small, windowless office Rowan used as a base when on site. He offered me a chair, then handed me a pen and a report form. You can write it here. Take your time. We'll take it from there. I sat down, took a breath, and began to write. Not out of revenge. Not out of anger. But because accountability only happens when someone speaks up, and I was in a position to do just that. As I wrote, Rowan quietly made calls in the background, internal affairs, legal, public communications. His voice was low but clear, every word deliberate. The wheels were already turning. 20 minutes later, I handed him the statement. He skimmed it, nodded. I appreciate you staying composed out there, he said. You set the tone for the whole station. I've had practice, I said, standing. Unfortunately. He gave a tight smile. Still. You reminded a lot of people here what real authority looks like. I slung my bag back over my shoulder and offered my hand. Thanks for taking it seriously. Rowan shook it firmly. You ever consider transferring into oversight? We could use more people like you. I smiled faintly. Maybe one day. But right now, I've got a train to catch. I stepped back onto the platform minutes later. Callahan was gone. The passengers had returned to their routines. But the tension had been replaced by something else. Respect. This time, no one looked at me twice. The end. Let me know if you want a wrap-up summary, tags, and disclaimer for this video/story. Part 6 ChatGPT, Part 6, Quiet Departure. The train finally rolled into the station with a slow screech of brakes and a hiss of pressure. The doors opened, and passengers began to shuffle on board. I waited a moment, letting the crowd pass, not because I needed space, but because I had earned the right to move on my own time. As I stepped onto the train, a young conductor in a navy vest looked up from his tablet, then did a double take. Marshal Green. I raised an eyebrow. That's me. He smiled quickly. Heard what happened? Word travels fast around here. Apparently faster than the train, I said with a small smirk. He laughed. Fair point. We've reserved you a quiet seat near the front. Complimentary, of course. I nodded, surprised but appreciative. Thanks. He led me past the crowd, through two nearly full cars, until we reached the front. A window seat, clean and quiet, waited for me. I placed my bag down and sat, glancing out at the platform one last time. The officer was gone. Rowan had disappeared back into the building. But the station felt different now. Like it had been recalibrated. As the train pulled out, I reflected on everything. The confrontation. The reversal. The way silence gave way to truth. Power isn't about shouting or showing off a badge. It's about knowing when to speak, how to act, and never forgetting who you are, even when others try to decide that for you. The city began to fade into the distance. I leaned back, finally exhaling. And for the first time that day, I truly relaxed. The real end. Would you like a summary, hashtags, and video disclaimer for this full story? Part 7 ChatGPT, Part 7, a message that echoes somewhere along the ride, somewhere between the quiet farmland and the blur of telephone poles. My phone buzzed. A message from Rowan. FYI, the footage has already made it to internal channels. A few other officers reached out. Quietly. Some have concerns about station culture. Looks like you didn't just stop a bad search, you started something bigger. I stared at the screen for a second, then put the phone down. That was the thing about moments like this. They didn't always explode. Sometimes they rippled. I had no intention of becoming a symbol. I wasn't there to cause waves. I was just catching a train. But when you carry responsibility, real authority, you don't always get to choose when you lead. Sometimes, leadership finds you at the edge of a coffee-stained platform, staring down someone who assumes you're powerless. And then it's your move. Outside the window, a kid waved at the train from a crossing. I waved back. He smiled. It reminded me of something simple: people watch what you do more than what you say. And the right move, made with calm strength, can echo far beyond one station, one cop, or one search. The train rolled on. And I knew, so would the message. Would you like the final wrap-up, description, hashtags, and disclaimer for video format? Part 8 ChatGPT, Part 8, Aftermath and Accountability. By the time I arrived in Chicago, the day had already moved on, but the situation at Union Station hadn't faded quietly. I received a call from Rowan before I even left the train. Thought you'd want to know, he said. Officer Callahan submitted a formal statement this afternoon. He admitted to prior questionable stops, and he's stepping down. Voluntarily. I didn't speak for a moment. I wasn't sure how I felt. Relieved? Maybe. But mostly, resolved. That's a start, I said. But it shouldn't take a badge to be treated fairly. I agree, Rowan replied. We're working on a new protocol for random checks. And I've scheduled a department-wide review of conduct standards, especially when dealing with passengers. It won't be fast, but it'll be real. Good, I said. Because one day, it won't be me standing on that platform. And when it's not, he said, we need to make sure the next person still walks away with dignity. That stuck with me. After we hung up, I paused at the edge of the station, a mirror of where it all began. Different city. Different faces. But the same responsibility. I didn't set out to teach anyone a lesson. I just refused to be quiet. Now, maybe others wouldn't have to speak so loud. And maybe, just maybe, a few more officers would pause before assuming too much. Because once the tables turn, they don't always turn back. Final chapter complete, ready for the summary, video description, hashtags, and disclaimer. Part 9 ChatGPT, Part 9, Quiet Ripples, Loud Change. Weeks passed. Life moved on, new assignments, new stations, new faces. But every so often, I'd get a message. A quiet DM from a transit officer. A forwarded internal memo. A hushed thank you from someone who'd watched the footage or heard the story. The change wasn't loud. It never is. But it was real. Rowan sent a photo one afternoon, a printed copy of the new passenger interaction protocol, posted in every break room at Union Station. Bold letters at the top read, profiling is not policy. Respect is non-negotiable. Underneath it, guidelines for conduct. Expectations for approach. Steps for de-escalation. All born from a moment that was supposed to go unnoticed, just another routine stop. Except it wasn't. Because I didn't let it be. Because I stood there, looked a man in the eye, and didn't flinch. And now? A ripple. I closed the message and looked out the window of my current train, watching city lights blur past. Somewhere behind those lights, someone else was standing on a platform, just waiting for their ride, and this time, maybe no one would question why they were there. Maybe the tables wouldn't need to turn at all. Would you like the final summary plus video description, hashtags, and disclaimer now? Part 10 Final ChatGPT, Part 10, Final Legacy. On the tracks. A month to the day after Union Station, I returned, not in uniform, not on assignment. Just a traveler, like before. No headlines. No confrontation. Just peace. As I stood quietly sipping coffee again, same spot, same kiosk, a young female officer approached. She wore her cap neatly, her uniform crisp, but her posture wasn't confrontational. It was respectful. Marshal Green, she asked. I turned. Yes. She smiled nervously. I just wanted to say thank you. I started here 2 weeks ago. They talked about what happened. What you stood for. It changed things. I nodded. What's your name? Officer Lang. First post. I extended a hand. Then it's yours to shape. She nodded back, standing a little taller. Safe travels, ma'am. And just like that, she walked off, no incident, no suspicion, just acknowledgement. The train arrived. I boarded with ease, sat in a new seat near the back this time, and leaned my head against the window. Some changes roar like thunder. Others move like trains, quiet, steady, impossible to stop once they're in motion. What happened that day wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Accountability. And the belief that even in a system slow to evolve, one moment of truth can realign the tracks. Because when the tables turn hard, sometimes, they don't turn back. They reset. And they stay that way.